All right. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. I think the first thing I'll do is show you the minutes from the last meeting, just in case it inspires anyone to want to take minutes for this meeting. You can see how simple they are. Um, but they are posted on the town's website. Let me see if I can share. Oh, I can't share. Can you let me share, Jean?
Yep, hang on one sec. Okay, go for it.
There they are. So this is from our last meeting. Again, we just talked about that the plan will be coordinated with the town plan. We finalized the resident housing needs survey, as you all know. We did the survey outreach discussion, kind of how we were going to get it out there. We discussed the worker survey a little bit. And then we set our regular meeting date and time. So just saying, if anyone wants to do it, it's an opportunity. So just don't all raise your hand at once. I'll do it if no one else wants to, but I just didn't want to take.
Jocelyn, I'll take notes into a Word document and send it to you if that helps you.
Yeah, I mean, if you have your computer open and you can just take some notes, I mean, I think that would be great. One thing that's kind of hard is like running the meeting or talking as much as I do, unfortunately for you all, and then also taking notes.
Yep, I will take notes.
Okay. So just so you all know, there is, and you probably already know this, the agendas and the minutes are posted on the town website. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight.
Is it on the agenda to approve the minutes?
We can. I don't bother, but in my other committee meetings, but if you want to, we can do that, or I can send them to you and we could approve both this meeting and next meeting at the next meeting.
Yeah, let's do that. And then we can officially have it on the agenda as an agenda item. So
I'll write myself about. Okay. So on this agenda for tonight, we are going to talk about the survey results that we got so far from the resident housing needs survey. And then really plan then I guess the other big thing on the agenda tonight is to plan for sort of a first community-wide forum where we invite everyone to come and just hear more about what this whole housing plan process is, why are you doing it, and then also get, if they're interested in hearing what the results of the resident housing needs survey is, we can tell them that, and then also just sort of share with them the other opportunities that there will be for residents to provide input as this process moves along. So those are the two kind of bigger pieces of the agenda. I think we could just start talking about the resident housing needs survey. You do have a few more results than you had when I sent you the results to look at. Right now you have 234 responses to the survey. And I'll just say quickly, if you wanted, I mean, I think 234 is a pretty good response rate. If you wanted to get to a place where you had a 95% confidence level and a 5% margin of error, then you would need 290 responses, which is about 50 more responses. So I don't know, if you want to put it in one more e-newsletter or, try something else to get, 50 more responses, or if you want to just kind of let some more trickle in organically. That's sort of up to you guys.
So it happens that, so I send out the monthly newsletter on the first Tuesday of the month, and it just so happens that next Tuesday is the first Tuesday of February. So I can definitely put it in there. There was, from that sort of 3 survey constant contact that I sent out, it was interesting that the number of responses, so constant contact gives you reporting on every link that is in your email that you send out, and it was the highest number of responses followed the where it was in that constant contact email. And so I believe the housing survey was at the top, then ARPA, then the child care, and it went right in order. And the housing survey had the most clicks on the link, and then the next was ARPA, and the third was the child care. So I'll look to get them sort of up towards the top of the one that's going to go out on Tuesday. And hopefully we can get that 50, because I think, let me log into Constant Contact and I'll tell you how many response or click-throughs that we got from that link.
Alice, did you have a comment?
Yeah, when's the due date or deadline when we won't be accepting anymore?
Well, so that's open to you guys. It's up to you. What we're going to be talking about next is doing this, informational forum about the housing plan and letting people know what the survey results were. And maybe that would be in early March. And so I guess I would say I don't see any harm in leaving it open until that, until a couple weeks before that, or a week before the forum or something. And or the next meeting of this committee. And then we could talk about it again. Yeah, Connie?
So I just think that it's important to keep in context, or keep in mind the context of all of these other things that are going on in town right now. And there have been several, as we've talked about it here, places where we've surveyed town residents and people who work in town recently. And so, I think that having side of developing a survey and trying to get people to take it, that our response rate is pretty good. I'm just not sure how, that things will change very much if we have 50 more responses. I think we should beat ourselves up too much. And I think that we should be informed by the information that is in the other recent surveys. In other words, the POCD survey had information that would likely be relevant to us in our consideration of housing needs, as did the ARPA survey. I just think that especially because of these things that are kind of happening all at the same time, that it's probably more in our favor to think about that and frame what we're doing in that context than to create confusion by seeming like we're doing something entirely different that is, incredibly siloed, when much of it is similar information.
Yeah, so Connie, are you opposed to keeping it open though, and just putting it in one more newsletter? Okay.
I'm not opposed, but I also would say that we probably don't want to spend too much time on this, and that if we don't get 50 more responses, I don't think that we should. I don't think we should cry about that. I think we have some pretty good information.
I totally agree with you, and I also agree that
it still would be okay to have for the selectmen to put the thing in, and the library letter. I mean, those are sort of not attacking anybody. And why not just have those still, in front of people? We got another month practically. So
Virginia?
you're mute.
We can't hear you. We can see your mouth moving though.
I agree with Alice.
Okay. All right. So we will keep it open. We'll do, but we won't, we won't beat ourselves up. I think Connie's right that, overall the percentages aren't going to change that much with 50 more responses. So we won't spend any more time on that. I did ask you all if you had a chance to, I don't think we should necessarily take the time to review all of the survey responses one by one, unless you really want to do that. But I am curious to know if there were things that you took away that we could, for example, when we do this informational forum, is there a concern that you saw in the survey that we should make sure to address? And or, what stood out to you when you looked at the survey responses in terms of the needs that seem to be coming through from the survey responses? Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so I was, there clearly seems to be strong support for smaller homes in the village center, which it was nice to see. When we put the question in there about more homes in the rural district, I was nervous to see what the response rate to that, given recent discussions at the town level. So, and there's very little demand for that. So that was very interesting. And also the feedback on the ADUs was very, very helpful and sort of illustrative in terms of, it seemed like people sort of don't know about it and would be interested in assistance in terms of learning more about it. Because, as is, the Kent regulations are quite generous with regards to ADUs. So that might be an area where, folks, have an initiative to, really help folks out in that department. So. And then of course, as David pointed out, I think this is what he was referencing, is there are some other comments regarding the type of people who are going to live in this housing that I'm not surprised. I'm a little disappointed, but I don't think we are going to address those concerns.
Yeah.
I will say one concern that I saw, and I'm as you know, I've looked at a lot of these survey results, and there's a bunch of towns working on them now, and nothing in there was anything out of the ordinary. One thing I do see a lot of is concern that somehow the housing plans in our towns are going to make them suburban or urban. And one of the things that I always try to emphasize is that no member of any committee that I have ever worked with before has been in favor of making their town suburban or urban. Like everyone's interested in continuing to have the rural, protect the rural environment in their town. So to just maybe it would help with some of the concerns around that, to make sure that people understand that that is a priority as well as creating housing options. So to do things that meet both of those goals.
Yeah. Jocelyn?
Yeah.
One thing that stuck out to me, question number 3, a little over a third of the respondents had problems with rent, mortgage, utilities, and I think in a town as affluent as Kent, that's significant. That's the one that jumped out to me. And a quick note in terms of the negative responses, where the logic won't really work with those, but I've been told by people who were around at the time that when Templeton Farms was first proposed, there were concerns about bringing in outsiders, at 65 and 70 years old, that it should only be for Kent residents. That will always be a concern. of a few people. Education is the best we can do there. And I wonder if contacting the chamber might get some idea of the housing needs for the service people and the employees in town.
Sorry, John, can you say that last sentence again?
Contacting the Chamber of Commerce and employers in town might give us some valuable feedback on the housing needs of the people we depend on in the stores and in the trades.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the separate survey we have
Okay,
for workers.
That's right. Yeah.
A little bit later on the agenda, but I think that's a good point. And one of the things that we could do is send it to those folks, and we could probably also just ask them whether they think in general the cost or availability of housing is having an impact on their ability to attract or retain employees. It'd just be interesting to know how many of them say yes, and then ask them to pass on that worker survey to their employees. But we'll talk about that during the worker survey portion, if that's okay. All right, anything else jump out to people from the survey results? I mean, obviously we can keep looking at them and keep taking them under advisement as we move this process along, but go ahead, Connie.
Jocelyn, maybe this is more in the realm of the community forum, but just in light of like some of those negative comments, somebody shared with me an email that was circulated in Goshen about their housing plan, and suggesting that this was the last chance that the people in Goshen had to fight back against developers who were going to ruin the town. I find that some of this stuff is so polarizing when it needn't be, and can, as a community, can be so together in their problem solving. But I also am very much feeling that, some language just, causes people to dig into their various positions, and that in designing our community forum, we should really be conscious of that and try to, work against that as much as possible. I mean, I don't really consider there to be like this huge divide of two groups in Kent, the service people and the people who are served. I think that's a really false dichotomy, and the suggestion that if we don't create housing that's more affordable, we won't have anyone to volunteer in our fire department, suggests that the fire department is for one economic social strata only, which is, should not be the case. I hope that would never be the case in the town of Kent. The town of Kent is a civic community, and everyone should be doing a civic duty, regardless of their economic, conditions. So I just feel like if we can try and be conscious of that and refer to Kent's community as one community, and not, give this impression that there are all these different groups, that will head off some of those negative opinions and connotations when we do our community forum.
Yeah,
Connie, I agree with that. And I think we could pick out 5 words, even if we pick 3, that are terribly charged words. And one of them is development. Just you say that word and it just turns most people off, because it's the antithesis of rural, right? So if we just find other words, providing housing or anything, but to your point is what I'm saying. They're just a certain kind of word that puts people in a mindset that's negative about anything that you talk about. So we've learned that in planning and zoning.
Virginia, go ahead.
This is really for the forum, but for instead of development, we at KH talk about housing developments, options, housing, opportunities for housing. The Goshen website has a terrific thing called Mythbusters. I recommend you look at the Goshen Housing Trust website and see how it presents things. It's quite wonderful. It has a new news and views part, which is very good. Also, I think that some pictures of before and after at the forum might be useful if we're going to be projecting anything. The present, you know this, Jocelyn, the buildings in Goshen that are going to be renovated are in pretty dire condition, and showing that as something that could be improved, perhaps comparing it with the housing at Templeton, which is maybe sort of similar, but the point being that renovation is a good thing. Development is the same as renovation in many cases. So might try that.
All right, so and we are going to again get right in. We'll get right into talking about this community forum. Are there any other survey responses that people want to talk about, or again, this is, it's just another thing we can refer back to when we take the next steps in this process, other than the community forum, which will be to start formulating some goals and some strategies. And they'll obviously be informed by both what residents say that they need, and also the kind of housing data analysis that we have done, and also all of the experience of all of you here. So
I guess I would just,
Yep.
I thought it interesting that roughly half the respondents were looking for smaller housing options. 1 and 2 bedroom homes seem to be a unifying theme,
Yep.
which I thought was just an interesting takeaway for starting to see a pivot away from larger houses, either because people are young and they don't want a big house, or because they're older and they don't want a big house, or because they just don't want a bigger house. I can certainly appreciate the appeal of.
Yep.
Small
Virginia?
houses are, I think, pretty much by definition, less expensive than bigger ones. So that really is the same answer of let's not pay so much. But you're right, that was very prominent.
Well, I think it also goes to maybe who answered the survey, right? Because I mean, somebody who was, who owns like a weekend home that can house all of their children's families, and, I mean, maybe folks would be less likely to be answering questions about what their housing needs are. But I don't know that that's true either. I just know that, look, maybe this goes to Virginia's comment, if you're tight on funding, even if you might like to have, 3 or 4 guest rooms, you might know that you're never going to afford that anyway. And so, what you're going to look for is going to be matched to your budget.
Although the survey questions were specifically, what types of housing do you think that the town of Kent needs more of? So someone sitting in a single family home, like they're thinking about what does Kent need, not necessarily what I need. So I'm grateful for our single family home with 2 little kids, but I do think Kent needs more smaller housing opportunities.
All right, great. So again, we can be referring back to these survey results and as we move along in the process. But should we talk about this first forum next? Is that okay? All right, so I'm just gonna pull up the very drafty sort of agenda if I can find it. Where is it?
While you're looking, Jocelyn,
Yeah,
first topic says 830J, which I understand that is what instructed us to have these meetings and plans. What is TA grant?
yeah, sorry, that's the technical assistance grant. So it's, again, usually the topics are like, why are we doing this? And one of the reasons why is because you have to, because of that statute 830J. And by the way, the stuff in the red is kind of like detail information. It isn't what I would necessarily put on a flyer. But so why are we doing it? One reason is that every town has to have a housing plan. The other reason is that it's an opportunity for the town to think about what types of housing it might need. And then the other reason is that it has a technical assistance grant from the state to get it done. And I will say that what I really want to talk about tonight is just kind of overarching, like, what do you want to cover at this forum? And then what I will do before our next meeting is I will draft some slides and talk with whoever else you want to present at this forum. And then we can review it all together at the next meeting. So what I really want us to talk about is, do you want to do this forum? What are the topics going to be? And can we pick a date for it? So again, what usually we do at this point in the housing plan process is kind of these general, why is the town doing this? What types of housing does the town need, kind of based on the existing housing stock? And then the next data, the next point is sharing the results of the survey. We can show that film, that 10-minute film. I hope you all have had a chance to see that. If you want, again, it shows obviously the housing that's affordable in Kent, but also in neighboring towns. And I think does a good job at showing how you can have housing that's affordable in small towns. That's very much in keeping with the nature of those towns. And then really, again, describing what are the steps in the process of creating the housing plan, and how can they provide feedback if they want. And then obviously we can open it up for questions or comments or concerns. So I guess, is everyone on board with having this type of forum? And then if so, are these the types of topics you would want to cover there? Or are there other things you would want to talk about? Virginia? Sorry, I can't see everybody because I'm.
One of the things I'm very sensitive to is the cost. And everybody says this is going to raise our taxes. And I think, of course, that's not the greatest truth in the world. Both the Mythbusters at Goshen and a part of our websites, which called The Value of Affordable Housing, address the questions that came up, particularly in Falls Village last summer, mostly about this is going to crowd our schools, this is going to raise our taxes, it's going to lower the value of our houses. These are the things that people speak up against. Now, the people who are speaking up against affordable housing are ones that are probably not real likely to come to these forums, except if they want to yell and scream those same things. I am interested to know what the definition of rural is. Kent is not rural for the most part. Rural is farming and open spaces. What we have here is a very small but dense town center, which is very much important to the town, and tourists coming to that are a very important part of Kent's economy and the chamber. By the way, the chamber, I thought we were going to send the questionnaire to the chamber and ask them to have their employees fill it out. Is that the plan?
Well, that's the worker survey. Yeah,
Yes.
which is a separate survey from the resident survey. And we haven't,
I know
that
that.
has,
I'm asking if you're sending the worker survey just to the business owners, or are you encouraging the business owners to distribute it and ask their employees to fill it out?
B, option B of what you just said.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Connie?
I just want to go back to what Alice was talking about in the charged words theory, because I don't know, and I mean, I think we have to talk about, you know, this word affordable housing and what it means, because I think in the one sense we're talking about all housing in Kent, and yet we're titling the forum to be about affordable housing, but we ask people all kinds of questions that weren't necessarily about affordable housing. And I mean, to me, aren't we talking about making sure that the people in our community have housing? You know, affordable or not, I mean, like, affordable is a relative term that is, you know, it is not like there's a magic line, although of course there are statutory, you know, and all kinds of different ways of measuring this. But what this is really about is Kent aspiring to be a community where people that matter to us can live. And some of them, you know, because of the way that because of the housing stock that we have, some of them face challenges. So what are we going to do about that together? I mean, this is a problem solving. This isn't like, you know, changing our whole town and importing some new residents from somewhere completely different. This is about what we want for our community and, you know, basic human services that allow people to live here. So how do we do that in this forum? How do we convey that so that it doesn't seem like we are only talking about creating housing for, you know, for people who really need substantial assistance, which is important, but we're talking about all kinds of other things here.
Yeah, I totally hear you, Connie. And I'm perfectly happy to, you saw me taking out the word affordable because I agree with you. I mean, because, well, it's your plan, and I'm hearing that you want it to be a housing plan that covers that kind of full spectrum of housing needs, and that affordable housing is a piece. And it has to be included in the plan, but the plan doesn't have to be limited to that. So I think that's a good point, and we can certainly spend, you know, a few slides talking about, you know, these are the, you know, affordable housing is one kind of housing that is needed, and these are some other kinds of housing that are needed as well. So yeah, I agree. That would be great. I will structure it more that way in the draft slides for you guys to look at.
Joycelyn, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Alice.
Yeah.
Just to sort of chew on this a little bit. Oftentimes I find the word affordable is just, it's overused. We're not using it, as you say, appropriately all the time. Available is a better word, I've been told, and I agree. And I think that's what we're talking about. Available for different kinds of needs, not just affordable needs, but all kinds of needs. And I tell you, I'm just looking at this as you were editing it, and I wonder what the word plan implies to a reader. Is it, a municipal landscape person who draws the roads and the bridges and you look like Washington DC when it's all finished? Is that a plan? I mean, are we really coming up with, what do we mean by plan?
That's a really
Are
good
we,
point,
huh?
Alice. That's a really good point, Alice, from coming from the
I
perspective
think
of
the word
who
plan
doesn't know.
sounds like once it's planned, man, that's the end of it. You either got to buy into the plan. I see your note, a vision is a better idea, or a community
Strategy.
goal or something, but excuse me. All right, I've said what I had to say. I just thought plan, looking at it on paper, I think, what is a housing plan anyway?
Well,
Strategy might be a word to consider.
What?
Strategy.
Yeah.
Strategies, yeah, strategies.
And I just wanted to throw in there that, one thing that I do think it's important to do is, again, because the statute that's requiring you to do this housing plan is requiring you to address the need for affordable housing. And so I think we should define what the state means when it says affordable housing.
Right.
Yes.
So we can, we can do that.
I don't mean that we're not addressing affordable housing, but we're
Yeah,
addressing more than affordable housing.
Agreed. David, you had your hand up, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, I think we were all sort of heading where what I wanted to say, but I would say for a lot of community members who are not steeped in the world of plans and zoning and all that sort of thing, a little bit of a education about what we are trying to do when we develop these things, along with the why, which is what, and that really, I mean, that would be kind of the first thing I put in there, and it could even include a little bit of the myth busting aspect, but if it's a chance to educate our constituents on like what this sort of exercise is for, I think that would be helpful and provide some context across the whole goal, and also like what other town communities are doing, why we plan as a community and what it means, and then focusing in on the housing and what the state expects from us, so that people understand that this is not just some sort of piece of paper that's going to get tossed in a file eventually, or that it's not a grand plan like for laying out Washington DC, but it's a document that the community uses to figure out what the next 10 years look like.
All right, Virginia?
David has said that quite well. And there again, like I've done before, I'd like to suggest that he make some notes on that and send it around, because I think that's important. The definition of affordable housing is what the state has behind this program, but the state is not telling us how to do it. They're asking us to figure out a program for doing it. And I think that's important to get across somewhere too.
Yeah, and I do think when you guys see these draft slides, they'll allay some of your concerns. I know I just gave you like some bullet points here, but what else? Anything else that you all think we should? I guess the other question is.
Tom's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see everybody on.
That's okay. It just popped up on
Okay.
my screen.
Right. Thank you, Jean. One detail first, Jocelyn, in your bulleted items. I'm thinking that the second and the third bullet points kind of go together, but I would present the survey results first on the agenda.
Okay.
What we did, how we got the information, and how that brings us around to the discussion of what kind of housing is needed.
Okay.
And whatever my other point was, it just went out of my head, so maybe it'll come back.
All right, we'll just shout it out when it comes back to you.
So even though the housing data analysis is sort of a a snapshot of where things are now. We still want the survey results first.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I'm just thinking out loud.
I mean, in my mind, there's sort of two pieces of information that the committee is gathering and then utilizing them to help formulate some draft goals and strategies.
Mhm.
So
Not necessarily one is dependent in some order on the other.
Okay,
yeah,
I was
whatever you-
missing the source of the housing data analysis. I agree that should come very early. But the other questions about discussion about what kind of housing do we need, I think comes out of our survey results.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So, and the ACS and the census data might be also something important to put in there. You know, there's the 2020 census, and the demographic profile data should be coming out soon. With that, which would be very helpful for this if it's available.
So maybe those two things become a second bullet right after the why are we developing a town plan. That might be called what is housing in Kent look like right now?
Right.
Hmm.
And then almost you could just take that out of currently the third one, what types of housing does Kent need? Just take out that, move the results of the housing data survey analysis, housing data analysis up. But then the other three are kind of in the right place as far as facilitating a discussion.
Okay, I'll massage it a little.
Okay.
And again, you might all like when you see the flow of the slides.
It'll totally make sense.
Well, or if it doesn't, we'll talk about it and we'll move it around. But
I have a quick question about the film. I've watched the film a number of times and I think it's great. I do worry about having a 10-minute film, expecting to keep people's interest for 10 minutes on what likely will be a Zoom meeting or even in person. And I wonder if the folks who created the film could, or if they already have in the can, an abbreviated version, and we could say we'd like to wrap up with a really great short film that is a sort of summary of a longer film that you can get, and we can follow up with the link out to the public so that they can watch the full version.
yeah, and I think that's a good point too. And we could skip that whole thing and just mention that it exists if people want it. I do think it does somewhat good of a job of dispelling some of the myths, but maybe we don't need to do that at this forum because we're just focused on kind of a higher level overview.
I think a little bit of a visual presentation stimulates, sorry, Virginia, stimulates ideas and interest. But as Jean said, that 10 minutes is too long, but I think a little bit of visual would be very helpful.
Okay.
A trailer would be excellent.
Yeah. Virginia?
Okay, how about after the other part is done, there is a thing sort of like, here are some quick pictures of housing in Kent that we have now. This ties into where you're talking about, we need to know what's there now. And then say, more about this is in this film. You can either leave or stay for this.
Yeah, I guess
Or
the
if you want to go
problem
home and
with
have
that
a
is that,
martini, or go home and have a martini while you watch it on this link.
yeah. No, I don't have a shorter version, but I will see if I could, you know, there's possible I could start it and end it in a 2-minute period and then just tell people, you know, here's the link if you want to see more of it. But I'll see if I can do that. And then I will, well, again, we'll talk about it in the context of the overall presentation. You know, I think we want to end on letting people ask questions and provide feedback or comments. So I agree that 10 minutes is a bit long. And
Listen, I'd like to see the 10-minute version.
you would?
I mean, no, not that night. I mean, right now. I've never seen it.
Oh, okay. I will, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
One
I have
suggestion that I have just for consideration is that sometimes with Zoom meetings, you send out homework. And so, you know, there's no guarantee that everyone who comes to the forum will look at the video, but if we send it out beforehand, at least a handful will. And then maybe if you want to show some still shots or just an excerpt from it, you know, then at least, you know, people could go back and look at it later, but some people may have watched the film before they sign on. The thing that I'm seeing, and Jocelyn, I appreciate your, you know, your comment that we want to close with asking people for questions and observations and so on and so forth, is that, you know, again, we're kind of like, we're dancing around, you know, different subjects, and then we're hitting on the end with, you know, this idea of, you know, here's an example of some new construction that, you know, might happen in Kent. And I think that's fine. I do think the film is worth seeing, but I don't think it's the only strategy that we might consider in our plan. And I wonder if it might make sense to just pull a few case examples of different ways that towns have approached the issue of making sure that they can house everyone, so that just so that we're not, you know, we're not like bringing people along, hopefully winning them.
Oh, Connie, I can't hear you anymore. Nope, you're still gone. But I liked where you were going with that. So case study examples of the different types of housing that we're hoping to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Oh, now I can't hear you. All right, well, I'll play around with it.
Okay, Jocelyn, have you had these forum meetings in other communities? I'm wondering how it works. I'm assuming it will be a Zoom meeting. I'd rather have it in person, but I'm assuming it will be a Zoom meeting. What kind of turnout are we expecting, or how do we get turnout?
So it's a really good question. Yeah, I've done this in 7 towns now. And it is all over the place in terms of how many people came to the meetings. Like in Morris, we had like 20 people come, and in Washington, we had like 120 people come. And we actually had to like, our Zoom subscription only accommodated 100 people, so we had to up it. So there isn't a good way to know. But one thing I would suggest, if one thing we've done in most of the other towns is we've asked people to register for the meeting on Zoom. And I don't know, Jean, if you've done that for any other meetings, but you know, it's just one more step for them. They've got to put in their name and email address, and then it sends them a Zoom link that's specific to them.
So that we get some sort of idea. We can host, our licenses allow hosting up to 300.
Okay. I mean, I doubt we'll get 300, but
I think a really important piece to remember is right now, the housing is on a lot of people's minds. Alice knows, and David knows, Justin, you're acutely aware of the, with the Northern Gateway, very hot topic. So my guess is that we're going to have a lot of people participate.
Okay. So again, I think the nice thing about the Zoom registration is that you have some general sense of how many people are going to attend. And the other nice thing that I really like about it is that you can send them a reminder the day before, because you have their email addresses. So you can send them a reminder the day before with their Zoom link. So, if they told you, if they signed up 4 weeks ahead of time or 2 weeks ahead of time, and it's buried in their email, they'll have a reminder, the day or 2 days before. So I sort of like that about it. That's what I would suggest. In addition, I guess the town of Roxbury, who's having their informational forum actually tomorrow night, they, in their registration, asked people to put their comments or their questions if they wanted to, and give those ahead of time. I don't think that's necessary, but if, for example, you wanted to send them something like Connie was saying, in advance, you could do that as well. And we can talk about that, I think, next time. But should we talk about a possible date?
Sure.
Jean, do you have the town calendar in front of you?
I do.
So this group meets next February 23rd. So I'm assuming you want to do it after that, unless you want to have another special meeting ahead of that. Are you guys eager to do this forum sooner rather than later, or does it? Again, the committee can keep working on, starting to think about goals and strategies. We don't have to wait till after the forum.
Yeah, I think the sooner we can have the forum, the better. Just I'm looking at that 6:30 deadline, and I feel like there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
To get to the point where we're hitting send to OPM on our plan.
So we're thinking like a March timeframe, or even in February? How much advance notice do we need to give?
Well, I guess the question is, do you want to have this forum before your next meeting? Because I think we want to have a chance to review the slides together, right? If so, are you willing to have a meeting? Like if you wanted to have it before February 23rd, then, and you guys wanted to get together again to review the slides, you'd have to have another meeting in February.
Yes. So what if we, and I'm just looking at the town calendar, what if we did the forum on February 23rd in the evening, and we had a meeting for our group the Tuesday before, so the 15th. I would say we're doing it the Wednesday before, but that's a Board of Finance meeting. So meeting Tuesday evening. Right now, there are no meetings scheduled on February 15th.
That works for me.
I can do that. And I can send everything to you ahead of time as well if people.
Do we have a plan for that forum? A lot of things have been suggested, but if we're not going to meet again, who's going to take the suggestions and put them together and run the forum?
Well, Virginia, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about having a meeting on the 15th. So I would take a stab at trying to put something to, I'll put some slides together that hopefully respond to a lot of what you guys said tonight. But then on the 15th, we would, and I could send it to you the week before that. But on the 15th, we would meet again at 6:30. Is that good? And
I would not be able to meet at 6:30. As Connie says, I'm not essential. I would be able to get there maybe by 7, but not at 6:30 on the 15th.
So
Do you
Connie
want-
put in the chat that she's got ARPA focus groups on
okay.
the 15th. And maybe, is that, is that taxing too many? Is that an in-person or are you doing those on Zoom, Connie?
It's Zoom, but it's the same time. It'll be the same time. But you know what?
Sure.
I start to get really, really busy this spring in the evenings. So, if I'm not on a town meeting, I'm consulting. So do not wait for me. Just do it. And I can be there on the 23rd because I've already, blocked that out for our committee. So
Okay.
that's the good news. I would be in favor of doing the forum on the 23rd.
And I can send the slides ahead of time. And if Connie has if you have a chance to look over it ahead of time and have any concerns, or I could call you.
Just backing up here. Are we talking about February or March?
February.
Got it. Okay, so I think we have a Kent Affordable Housing meeting actually on February 15th,
Oh,
the day after Valentine's Day.
yeah. What time are those?
5:30 to whenever it ends.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay, so that's out. Um,
What about the 9th? It's Wednesday.
What about the 16th? What about the 16th?
That's
I
a
can't-
Board of Finance and
Oh,
I'm gonna be, yeah.
never mind.
It says Conservation Commission is on the 9th. Is that correct? I don't know why I thought it was
We
the
are.
3rd.
We moved to second Wednesday so that we could avoid Board of Finance.
Right.
So does that mean that the town account is not available, or?
Oh, it is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah,
Can we do it? Because
there's
Connie couldn't make it
multiple
the other
licenses.
time either. So could we do this 9th? February 9th at 6:30?
Yeah, I would have to just hand over co-hosting to somebody for part of it so I could go participate in conservation.
Oh, okay. You go to those too. Okay.
But I don't want to, I really would like, I think this is a good plan to get this done by the end of February.
What about the 8th?
8th on the calendar is Housatonic River Commission is at 7:30. But I don't know if anybody here is on that. So that might work.
Zoning Board of Appeals, I think, is on that day.
Are you on that?
Yes, there may or may not. Yeah, it's frequently canceled, but. Oh, John's on that too.
Yes.
Is that on, is that the second Tuesday or is it, I don't know, I thought it was Mondays. I'll take your word for it. Doubled up on the 7th. What about Friday the 11th? Just another, we couldn't hear you, Connie. I don't know what you said. I just have
Connie really likes Friday night meetings. I know.
Yeah.
You
I
do,
think-
or
I
you're
think the
being
turnout-
cynical.
I think the turnout for Friday night evening is going to be a little dim. I would be there because I have 2 little kids who don't do anything and there's COVID, but.
Yeah, it's just another day ending in Y for me.
All right. What about the 3rd of February?
That's We have the Board of Selectmen at 4. I could be optimistic that we'd be off at 6:30. I'd like to be optimistic that we'd be off at 6:30. Could we push it to 7? A start time of 7, and at 2 hours and 45 minutes, I would move to adjourn the Board of Selectmen meeting. As I don't know what else you could get done after 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I would make that work.
Can others make that work? A
for
critical
me.
mass. Okay.
That is next week.
What?
That's next week.
Good
Yeah.
point.
That's next week. So I would have to work on it. Yeah, I can make it happen.
And I'm just going to throw out there, I don't know how the rest of the group feels about meetings on the weekends. Okay, Connie's saying no.
Okay, and then can we try to figure out, because that was really fun. Can we try to figure out a date for the actual forum itself?
February 23rd.
The
Oh, right, we
23rd.
did. Okay, sorry. Okay, that one was easy. Awesome.
And
Makes up for how long it took us to get to the next meeting.
what time is good for the forum? What time works for the public?
I feel like 7 is a little, usually a more regular, but that's up to you guys. It's more of a typical more of a typical public meeting start time, but it's up to you whether you want to start at 6:30 or 7. All in
That-
favor of 6:30, raise your hand.
The date again, please.
All in favor of a 6:30 p.m. start time, raise your hand. If you're in favor of a 7 o'clock start time, raise your hand. Oh no, and I can't see David's hand.
David was gonna say 4:30 a.m., but I don't know if that would
4:30
work for the
a.m.
public.
All right.
No, I'm good with 7.
Alice, did you vote?
I did, but it's either one's fine with me. 6:30 or 7.
All right, Jean, tell us when it's going to be.
7. I was not
Okay.
counting. I was grabbing the
I
link for the
couldn't. I
Roxbury.
feel like it was a toss up there.
Let's go with 7 just to get people through their dinner time.
Okay. And I guess the only other quick question I have on this is, some of the other towns have had speakers at this forum that talk about different needs that they've heard of. Like in Washington, they had the school superintendent come and talk about the needs she's heard of from her employees and from families at the school. We don't have to do that, but if there are people that you would like to potentially present housing needs or a perspective, we could do that. So if nothing comes to your mind now, but it comes to your mind tomorrow or the next day, shoot me an email.
So the agenda that we have, that we just sort of fleshed out, is a nice focused, it keeps the sort of mission of the session pretty focused. And that means we can keep it to, an hour and hopefully an hour and 15 minutes.
Yep. Great.
I also
Okay.
put the link to the Roxbury one in the chat. If anybody wants to sign up for that one, which is tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah, it is. All right. Let's see. We're getting over our time here, and I know I promised you guys short meetings or hour-long meetings. So the worker survey. I did make the edits that David had suggested. Did people get a chance to look at that? Are we ready to go in terms of the questions? The questions okay with everybody? Thumbs up. All right. So I can make a flyer that includes a QR code for that survey. And the plan would be to, as we talked about earlier, send it out to employers and ask them to send it to their employees. And we can send it through the chamber. I'll do something like I did with the resident input survey, which is I'll send it to you guys with some ideas about how we can get it out. And then you can send me your ideas as well. Does that sound good? Okay.
So I assume there's a list of the top employers in Kent somewhere, sort of from the biggest one going on down, correct?
There are some lists. I mean, we usually do the typical like town employees, the school employees, again, sending it to the chamber and asking them to send it to businesses. I do feel like the private schools are kind of a different ballgame because they provide their own housing. So I'd be inclined not to send it to them.
Yep.
They have staff.
Yeah, we could ask them to send it to the people that are not housed.
High Watch seems like it employs
Yeah.
a lot
That's a
of
good
people.
idea.
They were just talking about putting a daycare center in there at the last planning and zoning meeting.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so I'll send that all out and then you guys can send back your other thoughts on how we can best get that out there. And the goal would be to get at least some responses by that February 23rd forum. All right. And then, the next thing on the agenda was just, I thought Justin had brought up a interesting point about the Kent Planning and Zoning Commission considering opting out of the new ADU regulations and parking regulations, and whether this committee would want to weigh in on that or ask the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider delaying opting out until this committee had a chance to do their work. So I thought it was a good question that Justin had, and I thought it would be worth just bringing it up to the whole committee. I know we have 2 planning and zoning people on the committee.
David, you want to answer that?
Which
and the
is the regulation that we're concerned about?
Well, it was on the agenda, I think, at the last meeting for the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider opting out of the state's new ADU laws, which would say that unless the town opted out, ADUs would be by right instead of by special permit.
Justin, I thought you were asking the P&Z to not opt out.
I didn't make any comments at the zoning commission meeting, but so the P&Z is going to be having a public hearing regarding opting out of the ADU regulations and the new parking minimums. Kent already has some pretty generous ADU regulations, but the parking minimums, however, are a different story. And if Kent opts out of adopting the new state minimums, it's going to make it more challenging for us to provide housing for 1 and 2 bedrooms to smaller housing downtown. So.
So I guess it would probably make sense for this group or somebody to attend the public hearing to make these comments, or we can bring that feedback back. With respect to the ADUs, we didn't require a special permit, I don't believe. We thought the regulations were already pretty lenient in that sense.
For detached ADUs, special permits are required, but for attached ones in the rural district, it's just by zoning permits. So those are as of right, and they're generally pretty generous. But it's the parking minimums that are challenging. For example, I took a look at how many cars are in the parking lots of South Common and Stewart Farm the other day, and for 37 apartments there were 35 cars there. So, but the Kent zoning regulations for for that number of units requires, I think it was a minimum of 70 something parking spaces. So,
Well,
Are you suggesting that it should be less than 70?
less than 70 parking spaces for 35 cars.
Well, I'm sorry, Justin, you said that the regulations allow 70. And there were only 35 cars there. So
Yeah,
what is your gripe?
So the new state regulations bring the parking minimums down to one parking space for studio and one bedrooms, and two parking spaces for two bedrooms or more. And the more parking that's required, it makes it more difficult to build denser housing.
so
Yeah,
why
so
don't,
I think the argument, go ahead, Jocelyn.
I was just going to suggest that maybe in the interest of time, we could put this on the agenda to talk about briefly at the meeting next week. Just to, again, decide if this committee wants to have a presence at the public hearing. Obviously, Justin can go to any public hearing he wants to and express his own views. But maybe we could talk about at the next meeting whether the Housing Plan Steering Committee wants to make a statement or not. And you guys could just think about that between now and next Thursday. Does that make sense? Or
Well, it certainly does, because if he's representing this commission, as opposed to his own personal opinion or even the affordable housing, we all need to vote on that and have a say in it.
right, yeah, if it's going to be a committee recommendation or suggestion to the Planning and Zoning Commission, then the committee need to be in agreement on it.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think the only possibility that makes sense would just be for a letter to come from this committee saying that we think maybe you shouldn't opt out, or whatever is decided, or just not speak to the matter.
And Justin, maybe before the next meeting, you could just send everybody, if you don't mind. I think you might have just sent to me. I thought it's kind of what you're thinking in terms of what's what opting out might mean in terms of reducing potential housing opportunity.
Yeah.
And then the committee can talk about it.
I
Virginia?
feel like we might.
If you want, no, never mind. I'll do it later.
Okay. Connie?
I feel like it might make sense for us to have, Alice, you or David, parking is bound up also in transportation, right? And I don't want to second guess just because we're focusing on the issue of housing, the requirements that P&Z has put into place that are, tailored to our town. And being part of, when I've attended P&Z meetings, the opt-out has really been, I would say that I think that our town is reluctant to do something that has just been set as a blanket for the state, recognizing that our town is not identical to every single city in the entire state. So I'm personally reluctant to push something that is against the position of the P&Z and before we understand everything that went into, you know, how they set their regulations.
Alice, maybe you can answer this. Isn't that the same omnibus bill that says that P&Z officers on the commissions also have to do educational training?
Yes. Yes.
And isn't it true that Kent already has accessory apartment regulations?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's not
I think that Justin and everybody, the way we had a presentation by legal counsel that has advised all municipalities to opt out as much as you want. Opt out, opt out, opt out. You can always opt back in, but if you don't opt out, you are losing control over your own regulations. I don't think I'm misstating that, but I could be. So you might see towns opting out. In fact, I forget the town in Connecticut that just blanketly opts out and then takes each subject and deals with it individually. John, you may remember this this procedure, and David, but so I don't think at this point arguing over opting out over this is particularly important. More important is that our regulations always support things that the town needs. Does it need, you know, one of the reasons parking's a big part of why we look at in terms of safety. Forget affordable housing, just plain old ordinary safety of people. So
Alice, it
I
sounds
think
like
I'm
what you're
right
saying
about
is
that,
that,
David. Huh?
sorry, it sounds, Alice, like, you clarified it for me. It sounds like the concept of the opt-out is really to give more flexibility for P&Z to
Yes.
Right.
see where they want to go.
So
And
with
And in a way, it's just to buy time until you
Right.
can analyze it to.
So I was just going to say with the ADU regulation, so Ken has some extensive and carefully crafted ADU regulations. For the parking, it's a much more sort of straightforward issue than with the ADU regulations in terms of, you know, so Kent requires for housing that is not statutorily affordable, for instance, Kent requires 2.5 parking spaces for a studio apartment. And to me, that seems, you know, very difficult to justify. And if you just look at the parking that's actually used in the apartment, you know, complexes that we have in town, it seems like an excessive, you know, amount of parking is required. And the more parking you require, the fewer, you know, housing units you can create. And if the goal of this group is to allow, you know, more, you know, housing units to be created, especially things like, you know, 1 and, you know, studios, you know, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, it's going to be at cross purposes with what it seems, you know, people want from the housing survey.
So Justin, I would just say, I don't think P&Z would be opposed to changing it. I just didn't think we wanted to be stuck with the state's mandate and then never being able to get out from under it. Because if we fail to opt out, that's what we're stuck with forever. We only get one shot at it. So we're not mutually incompatible here. I think P&Z would be very happy to entertain an adjustment to that regulation. We just don't want to blindly follow what the state is going to mandate, because that may not be appropriate for Kent.
And again, you know, maybe it's a timing thing here, because obviously this committee isn't at the point where it's made any suggestions about strategies or goals. And so, you know, what I hear Alice and David saying is that, you know, they can go ahead and opt out. This committee can keep doing their process. And if one of the suggestions is to reduce the parking requirement for a studio or 1 bedroom, the P&Z can decide what, you know, to take that on or not, because this is a guidance document. It's not a, you know, regulatory document. Then they could still do that down the road. That's what I'm hearing.
I believe that is correct.
All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we let you go a little bit
Let
later?
us go.
Let you go. All right.
Let us go.
Thank you so much. We'll meet again February 3rd, and I will send you some draft slides ahead of time. And if you do have any other thoughts on what you want in the slides, then let me know. But otherwise, I'll draft something and get it to you so you'll have something to respond to. All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
I